Hello, my fellow readers. This is iDark777 with another fan fiction review. As always, a link to the story will be in the description below. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, click on that bell for notifications, leave a comment in the comment section below on your thoughts of the story. And finally, this is my opinion. My opinion is not indicative of everyone in the world, so please respect that, as well as please help the channel grow by spreading the word around, because I'm always working. Always working! Always. Because you know, I gotta get paid. I gotta get money. But let's get into the review. We're finally here, folks. The big one. The legend. The myth. The icon story. I don't know where I was going with that. Fallout Equestria. The fanfiction so famous it even has, like, Rule 34 of it. What? Yeah. Yeah, I said this before. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff about Fallout Equestria that, like, everyone knows, like, even has merchandise and mods. Like, it's big. So when I found out about, when I decided to bunker down and review the story, well, not review the story, read the story, I was kind of worried that this story may end up being overrated because, again, you know, it's Fallout Equestria. When people think of the word fanfiction, they sometimes, if you're especially in the My Little Pony fandom, you think of Fallout Equestria. You don't think about any other story. You think of Fallout Equestria. Granted, if you're like a Ruby, a fan of Ruby, you probably immediately go to Coral because, like, everyone seems to mention the guy whenever Ruby fanfiction comes up. Yeah, that's the point. But when it comes to fanfiction, Fallout Equestria is usually the first one people would think of. And do I think it is overrated? Yes, a little bit. Now, I hit something. Now, being called overrated is not necessarily a bad thing, because usually when something is called overrated, there's usually some reason that it's called that. So, for example, let's take Castlevania Symphony of the Night, my favorite game of all time. Do I think Symphony of the Night is overrated? Yes, I do think it's overrated. Despite the fact it hasn't really aged that much. Like, it hasn't aged today. You can still go online, go like an emulator, or go on the Xbox and just buy it and play it. Hell, I got the version on my phone, so I can play it whenever I want to. It's still overrated. It's still ridiculously easy. Pretty much, like, 90% of the sword weapons are bad. There's some joke weapons. All the bosses have really repeatable patterns that don't really happen again. I think the only other Metroidvania game that it happens to is Circle of the Moon? Yeah, Circle of the Moon, except sorry, I'm tired. The only other game that does that is Circle of the Moon. The rest of the game has, like, different AI, so that way at least it mixes up. Some of the placements are, like, pretty bad. The voice acting in the game is, like, really, come on, it's Symphony of the Night. It's like it's late 90s voice acting. It's gonna be dumb. At least it's memorable. Just like Mega Man 8, Dr. Wowie. So, I had to. But does that make Symphony of the Night bad? No. It's still a really enjoyable, fun game that still gets talked about to this day. I mean, it's still a standard of Metroidvanias that people try to reach all these years later. That's, you know, just because something's labeled overrated doesn't mean that the thing it's being called overrated is bad. You just gotta look at it through what it actually is versus why it's being called overrated. And coming from someone whose favorite game is Symphony of the Night, you know, seeing me call Symphony of the Night overrated, you know, it at least carries a little bit more weight. That's just me. Everyone's going to have a different opinion, and that's mine. So, I do think Fallout Equestria is under that category. It's still a good fan fiction. It's good. It's got a good tone. It's got a good world, good characters. It's just the greatest fan fiction ever written. No, it hasn't. It's far from earned that. I can think of a dozen fan fictions that are better than Fallen Equestria. Better off alone. Not this time, Fate. Reflection of the Madness. I don't know. Yeah. But yeah, this story is massively entertaining. It is a riot to enjoy, and let's actually talk about it. So the first thing we have to talk about is, what is Fallout? Well, most likely everyone knows what My Little Pony is, but let's talk about what Fallout is. Fallout is a franchise created by Bethesda that takes place in a post-apocalyptic world where nuclear fallout has happened, hence why the name Fallout. And right now, Todd Howard somewhere, like in Kilimanjaro, dancing with his Wabbajack somewhere. It just works. The game was moderately successful until Fallout 3, where it became an instant icon. Like, come on, everyone knows Fallout 3. I bet you most people don't even know there was, like, games before Fallout 3. No, everyone only cared about 3. And New Vegas. And 4, kind of. But mostly 3. And that's what Fallout Equestria is based off. This is basically a ponified version of Fallout 3. So let's get into the story. The story follows a little pony by the name of Little Pip. Now, I do want to preface this, that this story actually poses a very interesting conundrum. How much of the game you're adapting should you adapt? And that actually comes into focus with Little Pip. I know I'm sidetracking here, but bear with me. I got it. This is actually important to this conversation. Now, once in the entire story is Little Pip actually described, which makes sense from a thematic standpoint. The story is taken from from Little Pip's point of view in a, eventually revealed to be past tense. Like, you don't really know it's first-person past tense until the very end of the story, and then everything's kind of revealed. The story is told from Little Pip's point of view, and we never really know what Little Pip looks like, which, again, makes thematic sense, since Fallout primarily became a first-person survival shooter, whatever. I can't describe Fallout's genre, where you basically design the main character. So that's Little Pip's whole philosophy. The story doesn't describe her because she's meant to emulate the player character. So the person reading it comes up with a different design for Little Pip every single time when you play it, when you read the story. So, now we got that out of the way, let's continue. Little Pip is a member of a stable, which is basically the Fallout Equestria version of a vault, which was a livable area designed for the ponies to survive the nuclear fallout. She was specifically the stable underneath Sweet Apple Acres. One day, the big celebrity of the stable, Velvet Remedy, shows up in her pit buck area, because Little Pip is a pit buck repair pony. That makes sense. And wanting to get her pit buck fixed. Little Pip takes it off, and then, during the night, Velvet Remedy goes missing. It's eventually revealed she left the stable. Little Pip, thinking, I can bring her back, goes and leaves. However, she's told by the Overmare she can't come back. You basically, once you leave, goodbye. Have fun. And so the story starts from there, where Little Pip goes and tries to find Velvet Remedy. She kind of meets various people over the course and slowly starts to inspires some hope. It starts with her running into some raiders. She gets captured with a pony named Monterey Jack. They kill everyone. Monterey Jack, holds her up. Said, "I'm gonna kill you." Said, "Fine, just take it. But just know that you're out of bullets." No, yes. Alright, fine. We'll do it. And he leaves. And then Velvet runs into Watcher, who actually turns out to be Spike. And Spike tries to help her. And eventually they go to New Appaloosa, where they meet, where Little Pip meets two ponies by the name of Deadshot Calamity, and eventually catches up with Velvet, and they kind of join Little Pip on their adventure. So like emulate the partner system in Fallout. Like if you meet a certain criteria, then they join you, and then you follow you around. And they even have like their own version of dog meat in a phoenix. And eventually they meet up with a survivor from Equestria, because Fallout Equestria takes place 200 years after the events of, like, Season 2, because this takes place around Season 2. The story was written when Season 2, I believe, only just started, so bear with me. They ran into Derpy, Ditsy, the Pegasus with, like, the derpy eyes. Granted, Little Pip did meet her in Ponyville, but we didn't know that. It's just, she was a ghoul who survived because she's a ghoul, and, that stuff. Eventually, they find out about a plot about a man named Red Eye, who's basically trying to run a utopia to emulate what Equestria once was, but is enslaving people and basically, the typical dictator stuff, Over the course of the story, they go to various places. They go to the ruins of Manhattan. There it is. Manhattan. They go across to Old A, where they have to deal with hellhounds, which are descendants from the Diamond Dogs. The Diamond Dogs that Rarity rewind at them. Like, this is whining. This is whining. That's that part everyone remembers. It's like one of the few moments from the show I actually know of. Yeah, that is one of the few moments of the show I know of. They come across a Canterlot ghoul named Steel Hooves, who's actually was about to marry Applejack, and then the whole nuke thing happened, and he got fused to his suit. They joins them, and they just go on adventures. You're wondering, why am I paraphrasing a lot of this story? A lot. Because, quite honestly, the adventures of Little Pip is where the big problem I find with the story lies. And it's not so much the content we're reading, because it is an entertaining read. It's just two reasons. One, the story's in first person. I get it. I get why it's in first person. Makes thematic sense. It just doesn't work all the time. There are parts, because a lot of the time, Little Pip's knocked out. She's knocked unconscious, and a lot of the decisions regarding the plot are made by either Calamity, by Velvet, or by Steel Hooves, or by Zenith, who's a zebra, but Zenith really doesn't matter about 90% of the story when she joins. She don't matter. Or, Little Pip's not really an engaging character. I'll talk more about that when I get to the character part. I just want to finish the plot. The reason why I glossed over a lot of it, because a large portion of what makes Fallout Equestria good is the world building. Like, the world building is something else. If there's one part I would actually, spoiler alert, I'm actually recommending this story. If there's one part of reason why I would tell you to go out of this way to read the story, it's the world building. The world building is out of this world. Periodically, through throughout the story, Little Pip comes across these memory orbs, and so when she touches her horn to a memory orb, she sees a memory from the past through the pony's eyes, and we get a backdrop into events that are surrounding the mystery of what happened to Equestria to us. Because when you first read it, you don't know why Equestria is like this. What happened? What caused all this? What's the truth? What's lying? And then when you get these memory orbs, you see these unfiltered events as seen through Little Pip, seen through him or her face, and it's so much more interesting than reading about all this stuff regarding Little Pip leaving the stable, going to New Appaloosa, fighting raiders in the ruins of Ponyville. Is that the name of it? Ponyville? Like Ponyville, whatever. Horsetown. I'll call the place with the library the Horsetown. Going to New Appaloosa, going to Manhattan with the 10 Pony Tower, going to Philadelphia with all the stuff with the Enclave coming down before the clouds, all the lore about the fact that everything's cloudy because the ponies the Pony Enclave, the Pegasus Enclave basically permanently blocked out the clouds so that way they can grow and live and be isolated from everyone. Having to take down Red Eye, having to stop the great and powerful Trixie because Trixie's still alive. Hold on. There we go. Trixie's still alive, and they have to stop Trixie as well, and then then have to save the Pegasus. Have to save a bunch of Pegasus from in the shadows of Canterlot. It's like they have to go. Like a big part of the story is them having to actually journey to Canterlot, and then you actually got the Canterlot chapter, which is like 50,000 words of its own. It's massive, and probably that's like the best part of the non-backstory, non-world building area, because that's just amazing, because that whole chapter is just freaking amazing. But yeah, every time when I read the actual plot, like with Little Pip and her journey with Velvet and Calamity and Steel Hooves and eventually Zenith, it felt kind of dull at times, and a lot of this has to attribute to the fact that the story is told from Little Pip's perspective and not from any of the other characters' perspective. Again, it makes thematic sense because you're trying to blend as many elements from the game as possible. Not only the first person, making Little Pip customizable in a sense, besides her being small and a unicorn, but we don't. The story also incorporates a lot of stuff like with the Pip, like the Vault Boy things, just replaced with the main six. Her using her Pip Buck to help her aim. The whole part in the games where you actually zoom up into and you can shoot a specific body part with a percentage chance. I think it's called VATS or something like that. Even like noticeable mistakes. Like there's a part in the story where Little Pip has to go into like an abandoned building in Philadelphia because she's kind of forced to by the slavers of Red Eye. She comes across a turret where she destroys because she wanted to hack a little terminal. And then when she gets on the terminal, she notices that there's an actual key that lets her turn off the risk, and she's like completely pissed off about it. Like, oh come on, I should have did that. Which is actually realistic because that can actually happen in Fallout. You can shoot a turret and go to a terminal saying whose only purpose is to turn off the turret. And I've seen that happen to my friend who played Fallout New Vegas, and kind of got pissed about that too. Actual things like and also with like the reading, increasing your abilities, the lock picking. The author incorporates a lot of stuff into this story, and that gives it a lot of personality, like a lot of truth to Fallout fans. Like if you're a Fallout fan, you like the story. But there comes a point where it starts to repeat itself. Like that's that's the unfortunate truth about reading the story through Little Pip's perspective. A lot of the story slowly starts to kind of repeat itself. It's really awkward and really kind of hampers the story. Like, it's just, like I said, like a lot of parts, she gets knocked out, she wakes up, the rest of the characters kind of decided what to do without her, and then she goes back to sleep, and then when we catch up to her after that, they're already on their way. It kind of, it comes off as fragmented at times, and I get why they did that, because, you know, if you emulated everything about Fallout, then it's just gonna be a lot of walking and boredom, which kind of makes sense. But that doesn't take away the fact that the story really shouldn't have been first person. That's the hard part. And then you get to the part, and even with the first person, when you get to the world building with the memory orbs, and you see all this backstory, like with the whole war starting because the zebras were paranoid that Luna was still Nightmare Moon, and Celestia playing a prank on Luna by opening a school in the Full Moon Valley, kind of joking around with her, which causes which is the catalyst of the war, because of that paranoia, the zebras actually attack that school and murder all the children, which starts the war. There's a bunch of stuff with Pinky getting addicted to drugs. There's Rarity becoming solely obsessed with a black book, and then eventually splitting her soul to make the little statuettes. There's back stuff with what was going on with Rainbow Dash, and Fluttershy Fluttershy being the one to actually be the one to create the nukes, because she's the one who created the Mega Spell core that eventually became what was used as nukes. And then she gave the nukes to everyone, thinking, "Oh, they're not going to hurt each other. They're not going to hurt each other." Clap, clap, clap. because ponies and zebras are good. They're not gonna throw nukes at each other and potentially wipe each other out. And then she gets shocked when it actually happens, and she completely loses it. And she turns into a tree for some reason. Yeah, she's actually the only member of the main six that survives till the end. Granted, Twilight kind of survives. Kind of. Twilight's absorbed into Trixie. But, yeah, Twilight kind of survives. Rainbow Dash is actually implied to survive as well. She supposedly becomes, like, the Fallout Equestria version of, like, the mysterious stranger, who's, like, a ghost. It's like, actually kind of cool. I would have liked to see that. That's just me. But, yeah, Fluttershy just turns into a tree. You know. The whole point was Applejack's ministry trying to assassinate her and all that, and her relationship with Steel Hooves. There's the stuff with the Cutie Mark Crusaders, just completely disgusted with how corrupted the ministries are becoming, and wanting Equestria to go back to where it was. Twilight trying to make the Alicorns, and her slow descent into, like, destroying Splendid Valley and stuff like that. That is infinitely more interesting than anything to do with Little Pip. And that's kind of a shame, because this is all backstory. When the backstory is more interesting than the main plot of the story, you know something is wrong. And that's kind of sad. Characters, you got Little Pip. Little Pip's okay. Like, she's, like, the closer you compare Little Pip to is Puppy Smiles from Pink Eyes. And Puppy Smiles is basically done complete. One Pink Eyes is actually in third person instead of first person, despite the fact it focuses exclusively on Puppy Smile in that story. But the difference between Puppy Smiles and Little Pip is, first off, Puppy Smiles actually worked in the context. Well, Little Pip's didn't necessarily work. Puppy Smiles didn't really grow as a character, and Little Pip kind of has shades on that. She spends a lot of time not really growing. Like, she has a growth of a character, like a test a character at certain points of the story, which makes sense. And you don't really, because you don't, since you're technically playing a silent protagonist, makes sense how she wouldn't really grow that much as a character. Instead, you're supposed to infer her growth through the use of other characters. It just works with Puppy Smiles is the fact that Puppy Smiles is purposely meant to be a one-dimensional character. That's the reason why Puppy Smiles worked while Little Pip didn't. Puppy Smiles is specifically designed to be incapable of growing as a character because Puppy Smiles has long been dead, and thus her mindset is stuck in that very last moment of her being alive before she becomes a ghost. That's how Puppy Smiles worked as a character. And despite the fact it's in first person, Little Pip doesn't really grow as well as, say, Puppy Smiles, which unlike Puppy Smiles, you would have actually been able to see her grow as a character. It takes until halfway through the story before she starts getting a proper character arc and growing as a character. It takes half of the story to start that. Because the first half is just her wandering around trying to figure out what to do, looking for Velvet, looking for Red Eye, just like, I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. Because half the time, everyone else is making the decisions for her. Like, that's the shameful part, is the fact that Little Pip's character should have worked, but it didn't because the author was so focused on keeping true to how Fallout worked in its various elements that it kind of took away from Little Pip's character. Because once you get near the end, like once you get to when they show up at Canterlot and beyond, that's when her character starts actually being good. She's an internally curious little pony who constantly denies about being curious, yet she's doing that while she's picking a safe. She doesn't, as you say, she grows. She wants to be self-sacrificial. There's a part near the end, once you get to Canterlot, she gets the idea of being called the corrupted kindness because every time she does something, it inadvertently backfires on her and punishes other people. And she feels sorry for herself. But, again, the fact that it happens so late in the story kind of ruins it. This wouldn't have been bad if not for the fact Little Pip is the main character. The whole point of the story is Little Pip's adventure. Everyone else is just secondary to Little Pip. Again, that's why Puppy Smiles worked as a character. She was specifically made to be one-dimensional, while the author tried to have her cake and eat it too. Try to make a three-dimensional character, but try to incorporate so many elements of Fallout into the story that it kind of backfired on Little Pip. Granted, again, when Little Pip gets good, she gets good, but that happens way too late into the story to really make matters of it. There's Velvet Remedy. She's basically someone who emulates Fluttershy a lot. Like, she'll emulate the kindness. Eventually, it's revealed that she is the new element of kindness. And she wants to help others. She doesn't want to fight. There's actually a big part where she tries her best to try not to fight, but over time, she eventually realizes that she kind of has no choice at times but to do it. And thing throughout the story is Little Pip finds a memory of Fluttershy talking in front a bunch of people that on a stage that Velvet constantly replay, so it's kind of an addiction. And then once you get to the Canterlot chapter, Flutter, they come across that same stage with the pink mist. Pink mist is like supposed to be like this highly corrosive fallout that's constantly being created by a dragon in the Canterlot Mountain. And, you know, it can kill a pony. It can kill them only within a minute. And so what happens is they come across it, and Velvet slowly walks to the stage as the air becomes more corrosive from the pink smog, and she emulates what happened on the memory orb. And they're just completely freaking out. They're trying to get her. No, what are you doing? What are you doing? And they have to actually forcibly drag her out. And that's actually real character growth. She goes from a bitchy pacifist to someone who realizes that sometimes the best act of being kind is to put them out of their misery. It's kind of a harsh truth, but sometimes you have to do that cruel mercy sort of deal. You have Deadshot Calamity, who honestly is entertaining. He's basically what's called a Dashite. Basically, his whole stick is he was part of the Enclave. He went below the clouds, he saw the people suffering, and he went, I'm gonna go help them. The Enclave's like, no, you're not allowed to help them, so I'm gonna help them. Alright, get the branding iron. Shh, and they brand Rainbow Dash's cutie mark over top his cutie mark to register him as a Dashite, which means he's pretty much persona non grata as part of a member of the Enclave. Like, he's not allowed above the clouds, but he's supposed to be killed on sight, that sort of thing. And he's very loyal. He likes to put everything together. He's more or less like the idea man half the time. Remember how I said that, throughout a lot of the story, a lot of decisions are made by other characters besides Little Pip? It's mostly, if it's not by Velvet, it's by Calamity. And if it's not by those two, it's by Steel Hooves, which we'll talk about a little bit. Calamity is entertaining. He does have a neat character arc where his whole reason for joining Little Pip is the fact that he inadvertently shoots her. Like, Little Pip sees a caravan and he's like, hey, I'm safe. Calamity shoots her in the hand. It's like, be gone, raider. It's like, I'm not a raider. Like, yips. Oh shit, she ain't a raider. And then it's like, well, I wasn't a raider. So you were Rain Bard. But I'm not a raider. Alright then. And so I will come with you because I owe you that much. And so, and then we see that, Calamity's whole growth throughout the whole story of him having to be loyal, question his remain stubbornly loyal to Little Pip. Like, whenever she makes a decision, it's like, I gotta go with you, because if not for me, you've been killed so long ago. He's a sharpshooter. He's a straightforward guy. He's very entertaining. Excuse me. And he's not as well written as Velvet or Steel Hooves. I mean, just like Little Pip, Calamity is fairly one note. Again, this is a situation where he starts to stagnate, but he more stagnates in the second half. A lot of his character arc is centered in the first half of him having to come to terms with the fact that, they eventually have to fight the Enclave, and he has to actually fight his family and open up the clouds. And he's him coming to terms with the fact it's like, I will continuously choose these people because they need my help. They need it more than the Enclave. They need it more. I will literally die to actually protect them. And that's actually really admirable. You can see he's very entertaining. And very, very thoughtful. Well-written character. Not as well-written as Velvet and Steel Hooves. And then, speaking of Steel Hooves, we got Steel Hooves. He's a Canterlot ghoul. He was actually engaged to Applejack. He's that old. And what happened is he eventually merged to his armor because the city of Canterlot actually had to get actually had a put a shield on to absorb some nukes, and then the pink, in essence, set up the pink smog to kill Celestia and Luna. And that actually corroded the water and poisoned it a bunch. And so once the shield fell, all the water came into like the little zebra settlement and basically turned Steel Hooves into a counter-lock ghoul. His is a story of redemption. They first meet him killing a bunch of alicorns, which is basically the Equestria version of the super mutants from Fallout. And he's a very bitter individual. He's a very hateful guy. Like, he's very bitter, and he's kind of lost his way. Like, he has the most character development of any character across this main group. I mean, there's also Zenith, but Zenith doesn't really matter. Like, she has one chapter, like, the one part where you think she would have a proper character arc. She doesn't really have that, because she's kind of thrown to the side until they reach the Zebra Town and underneath Canterlot. And that's like the only moment where we get any kind of development and arc with her. She's just there. Yeah, she's really just there. But back to Steel Hooves. Steel Hooves is hateful. He's part of the the Steel Rangers. And at the time, he's feeling kind of disenfranchised. Like he's lost his path, and he's trying to kill all these alicorns because he's trying to find some kind of purpose in his life to keep himself from going mad. He comes across Little Pip in the gang, and he slowly starts to get a purpose when he notices that his own organization, the Steel Rangers, have become like technology hogs. And instead of using the technology to help it, they're hoarding it. And he realizes that he forgot what the Steel Rangers were, because he eventually saw the memory. He was told about the memory orb, and he realizes through Little Pip's actions that this isn't what Applejack would want. And that actually carries a lot of weight in the midpoint. Like a big bunch of the midpoint of the story is just focused on Steel Hooves' character arc, which is him wanting to reform the Steel Rangers into the Applejack's Rangers, because he wants the word Applejack to spread. He wants that idea that Applejack had for her ministry to come back and have some kind of symbol to inspire to. And he actually ignites a civil war in the Steel Rangers. And he eventually decides, anyone who wants to follow the word Applejack, bring back what the Steel Rangers used to be, what it should have been all along, come with me. And then, the Civil War happens. And, he actually leaves the group for a time because he actually wants to help. He wants to help them out, reformat, and try and figure everything out. He does eventually join back, and near the end, like near the climax, he actually does die, which is kind of sad. Which makes sense. I believe some stories in Fallout, the character actually dies in the end. I don't know if that's true or not, but it is very shocking. But it also fits his character because he found his way. He found a purpose. And now that purpose is done, it was time for him to go. They even set up like a big old funeral for him because, he was like the oldest, he's like super old. And they put him next, apparently, in Sweet Apple Acres. They set up a funeral pyres, like they did the shots and like soul salute, like, and they even left like his little statuette of Applejack on his grave, so that way he'll always be with her. And it's very sweet. It's very kind. I honestly think Steel Hooves is the best written character out of the group. That's just me. But, it is what it is. Now, we have the grammar. There are a couple grammar errors throughout the entire story. Not to mention the story does rely a little heavily on onomatopoeias. Like, there's a lot of parts where it's written, especially in like combat sequences where he just randomly puts the onomatopoeias there, like rat-a-tat-tat-tat or biz. It's kind of off-putting and kind of gets rid of the immersion of the story. That's something to talk about. In terms of the writing, the story is told from a first-person past tense sort of view, but you don't know it's first-person past tense until the end of the story, where Little Pip's final plan comes to light, where she has to hook herself up to the single Pegasus plot project in order to get rid of the clouds and allow people to go back on the ground, and Pegasus can join society and basically make everything grow and all that stuff and make Equestria what it used to be. And that's actually respectable. And the end of that chapter has Celestia, because Celestia is actually kind of live as like a subconscious sort of thing. So Little Pip is like, well, what do you want to... Well, you have some time before you set yourself up. How about you talk about what went on? And thus, we get Little Pip repeating the very first line from the prologue, where she talks about little Pip bucks, which kind of brings it back to the beginning of the story. I like that. Pacing. I think the pacing is phenomenal. It's very, very slow pace. It is not glacial, but because this story had to be slow paced in order to tell the story it needs to be, because it needed time, it needed room and time to be able to tell the story it wants to, especially in regards to the backstory with the ministries and all that. And it helps that... How do I say this? Oh yeah, now I remember. It helps that as the story went along, it slowly picked up. So it started very slowly because it needed very ample time to set everything up. Everything from the characters, to the world, to how the ministries operated, to the character arcs as they're introducing out and in and out. Even the times when Little Pip passes out and it jump cuts to somewhere else, there is a purpose behind that, because it's supposed to set up everything else. It feels so weird having that happen. That's more of a swing and a miss in my opinion. But it doesn't move glacial to the point where you're wondering, why is it taking so long? Every single thing that happens in the story has some kind of purpose that happens sometime later, whether it's Monterey Jack, because when they first enter 10 Pony Tower, they actually meet Monterey Jack again. So it's very, very good in setting a lot of stuff up at the beginning and slowly paying it off as the story goes along. And I like that. The only time the pacing gets really, really bad is, what's the chapter name? Chapter, I think it's 44? Yeah, 44, Galvanize, which weirdly starts doing third person, because this is the part where we find out, you finally realize, oh, Little Pip's gonna hook herself up to the Single Pony project. And so it switches between, like, a couple days before the big war happens and present day, where it takes place in third person. And that's a really weird disconnect, because when I was reading through that part, I kept just completely confused. Why are you doing third person now of all times, implementing it in such a very shoddy way, because we were so used to the story taking place in Pip's point of view, that you're randomly cutting in third person now. Like, if it switched up first persons to other characters, that would have been fine. But instead, it's just complete third person. It makes absolutely no sense to me. And it made reading that story way longer than it had any right to be. Just way longer. But other than that, the pacing was slow, and it picked up as it went along. Like, once they got to Everfree, the Everfree Forest, it picked up a lot with the tenseness and finishing all the plot lines up really fast. So once they reached Everfree, it went from very slow to very fast paced, and that's the perfect type of switching. Like, when it comes to the climax, like when it reaches the climax, you gotta pick the pace up everything. You gotta finish everything. It has to be phenomenal. You gotta enjoy it. You gotta enjoy the ride. Which leads me to the final parts. Would I recommend this story? Yes, I would. In fact, I'm actually going to put this in the Better Off Alone tier for the strength of the world building. The world building is phenomenal. Just amazing. Again, as I said earlier in the video, if you want to read this story, read it for the memory orbs, like the backstory with the main six and Celestia and Luna. Read it for all that. That is just freaking amazing. I really like that. I honestly thought, and that has every right to be read as a perfect example of how to do massive world building right. Shame that the world building overshadows the events of Little Pip. Favorite part? I would have to say the Pinkie Pie memory orb. To put this in context, in the what's the chapter called? The Shadow of the Ministries, chapter 37. Little Pip comes across these 6 memory orbs, which are made from either the members of the Ministry or someone very close to those members of the Ministry. Pinkie Pie's orb is taking place from Pinkie Pie's point of view, where Pinkie is looking herself in a magical mirror that Rarity made to show Pinkie, that help her clean up her act. Because at this time, Pinkie Pie is completely destroyed mentally. She was actually addicted to party time mint dolls, which is actually a big part of Little Pip's story in the very early, where she slowly gets addicted to. It just doesn't really matter that much because with Little Pip, because we don't see it's not really done well from the other characters' point of view. I'll talk about that a little bit. Just wait 1 second. And Little Pip is watching this through Pinkie Pie's eyes. And Pinkie Pie activates the mirror, sees the old Pinkie Pie, because, the sad Pinkie Pie is Pinkamania, the one from Cupcakes and stuff like that with the straight hair. And Pinkie Pie starts, instead of talking to Pinkamania, she talks to Little Pip. And it's eventually revealed that the mints that she made amplified her Pinkie sense to the point where she's able to tell that Little Pip is watching her. That's actually creepy. But I really liked how it finished that specific plotline of Pinkie Pie simultaneously talking to both Pinkamania and also Little Pip to give her insight. And eventually a large portion of that very same chapter is eventually caused by Pinkie, by association, because the memory orbs were actually extracted. These specific memory orbs are chosen by Pinkie Pie to give into Rainbow Dash to put them in a container, saying, "Here you go. Here's an orbs for Little Pip to eventually see." Yeah, fun. And which makes sense because Rainbow Dash is apparently like one of the ones that die afterwards. And that Pinkie Pie kind of dies in Manhattan. There's that because Little Pip eventually sees the skeleton of Pinkie Pie holding a Twilight Sparkle statue. And it's very, very depressing, but very, very hopeful because it helps with Little Pip's character a lot. That specific conversation. If you don't like that, then probably not much else. There's just nothing really stands out besides Pinkie Pie. I like Pinkie. This is actually one of the few cases that I actually think Pinkie Pie breaking the fourth wall and doing a lot of meta shit made sense, because she's hopped up on so much drugs that it actually makes kind of sense in the context. Like, memory orbs were really weird at... It's not the point. I like this story, but there is 2 changes I would make. 1, get rid of the onomatopoeias. Maybe enough. 2, if you wanted this story to be first person, either make it third person. As much as I know you would not, the author would not like that, make it third person. Or if you want to stick to first person point of view, have the first person point of view switch between characters at times. So, for instance, if Little Pip passes out, you can switch to Velvet or Calamity or Steel Hooves. Get their sense on everything. And you don't even have... And honestly, you can easily work around not showing what Little Pip looks like by having all of them take place in different rooms. So that way, you can just say... or use different words to not really describe any of her designs besides, oh, the small little pony is sleeping. Little Pip is like, you can find ways around, I don't know, that by introducing scenes that are told from different characters' point of views, by not having it anywhere near Little Pip. Like if they're discussing a plan, you switch to like Steel Hooves, and they know that Little Pip is sleeping, but he's talking to Velvet and Calamity, and not really bringing up Little Pip, so that way you can easily work around this. It would have helped not only Little Pip's character, most importantly, but it also would have helped grow Calamity and Velvet and Steel Hooves by showcasing all their actions from different points of view, or even showcasing their own specific point of views on specific matters, like what happens. It would have added a lot to the world building of the current events of Fall of Equestria, and also encourage the growth of the characters of Little Pip and her crew. I just honestly think that's what should have been done. You don't really have to change anything about the plot, because I think the plot's fine. But just incorporate new scenes of just showing switching the point of views to other characters. Especially in Galvanize, I think that should have been in first person. It just looks very awkward to read in third person. It doesn't work. That's why I said third person wouldn't really work for the story. Just keep it first person. That's fine. But yeah, that is Fall of Equestria. I liked it. I still don't think it's worthy of the title of greatest fan fiction of all time, but I certainly think it was a very entertaining read. I liked what it did. I liked all the stuff that it introduced. And it was massively entertaining. So, I will see you next time. This has been Dark Symphony 777, and cut.